everyone, Justine here again from our sewing room. Welcome to another YouTube tutorial. Today we're going to be doing something a bit different. We're going to be making swimwear. We're going to be using the pattern from Pattern School Online. Check out the website in the comments below. It's a really unique website in that the patterns are amazing. They're so well drafted. They require very little adjustments. Stuart's a great pattern designer. The only thing is the patterns don't come with instructions. So the assumption is if you are buying patterns from that website that you have some knowledge of sewing swimwear. I thought I'd put together a little tutorial just in case some people love the designs but feel a bit daunted by the lack of instructions. Stuart's just released an extended sizing range which is perfect, fits right on a big scale of sizes. One of the unique designs on the patterns he offers is the difference between posterior and anterior tilts, which allows the garment to sit properly with depending on what sort of tilt our bodies have. If you're unsure of what sort of tilt you have, you can always take a side-on picture of your body, preferably in like bike pants, something fitting, pop it on the Facebook group and someone can give you an idea of what percentage tilt you are. You can then select that in the layers option to print that particular tilt of the pattern, which has just changed my whole outlook on sewing swim once I worked out where my tilt was, and it just makes that comfort level next just amazing. The other thing is to take all your measurements. This pattern is based on your underbust and your bust measurements, so you then have the option to print off the cup size relevant to your measurements. Don't go by your normal cup size. So for example, I wear a double D in bras, however in this pattern I fit into I'm a C cup by measurements. So the patterns are drafted for the ease with swimwear, so the cup is not relevant to what size you normally wear in bras. So really do measure and pay attention to that. The other important fact is to do a test. I always talk about doing a test sample. When I do a test sample, I usually just do it in one layer of fabric. I don't line it. I have actually made a previous version of this particular pattern, so I did line my test this time, knowing that I probably would be able to wear it. So when you're making a test, use a similar type of fabric that you would normally use for your final garment. So whether it's a color you don't like or you know, something that you wouldn't normally wear, but use that for your test. The other thing I do for my test is I do it on my sewing machine rather than my serger. Just uses less thread. Sometimes I'll use a basting stitch. I can then pull it out and redo it if I need to. Always use elastic in your test fit. For example, when I made this one up, I wanted to see what it was going to be like in comparison to the other suit I'd made, so I tried it on without the elastic, and it just, everything was sitting wrong. Like the lines of the bust was down really low, and I thought I'm going to have to extend the waistline up. The straps didn't feel like they were going to be secure enough. The leg line was all over the place, and I thought, do I continue on or what do we do? So I thought, no, hang on a minute, we are meant to put elastic in all our tests. So I went and put my elastic in. Oh my gosh, I absolutely love the fit, and everything sits exactly where it should be. I have to do one tiny tweak on these, and if you go at the end, I'll put some photos in of my test. I have a sway back, which basically means that my back sways in a little bit. And so what I need to do for swimwear is just take a little piece out of that little back section. Unfortunately, that's an adjustment that you only find out at the end when you put your togs on to see where it's going to gape, and there I need to pull that in a little bit, and I adjust it on my pattern. So what I'm going to do today is take you through the steps to construct your own eternity suit. I'm going to assume you've got some level of experience with sewing swim, applying elastic, and all of the steps involved with that. I'll try and give some tips as I go, but it's certainly not a beginner tutorial. So please, if you haven't sewn swim before, I may do a beginner tutorial if that's what you're after. However, this is more just to get this finished product out there. So let's go through our pieces that we need to make ourselves this gorgeous eternity suit. So what you will have cut out is you will have 2 cup pieces, again based on the cup size in the measurements table, and they will look like that. You'll have a side insert, you'll have 2 pieces that look like that. You will also have this really strange looking back piece with the straps in it. I love this design. It means I don't have to add straps because they're already part of the one piece. So you've got your back piece, again 2 mirrored images, and then you've got your center front piece. Now this piece is cut on the fold, so that will look like that. So you should have all of those cut out in your main fabric, and then the same cut out in your lining fabric. The other tools that you'll need is a 10mm rubber elastic. Excuse me. I really like the rubber elastic. It sits nice and flat when you're wearing the garment. It holds its strength a lot better. You don't need to have a cover stitch machine. I'll use mine in it just to finish it off because I like the finish of a cover stitch. You can do it on your machine. A serger is always really good because it'll neaten off our seams. However, I'll probably do most of my internal seams on my sewing machine. I like the lightning bolt stitch, so make sure you're familiar with that. It's got a really nice hold. I like using my sewing machine for sewing swimwear because it helps my seams sit nice and flat. So when I'm applying elastic, I don't have as much bulk in the seams as what I would. Okay, so that's enough of me talking. Let's get sewing. Our first step is to grab our 2 cup pieces. So you'll notice that they're mirror images of each other, and you have 2 curved sections and 2 straight sections. So what we're looking to do here is use this curved section, and then we're looking for these pieces. So these are our front side panels. So what you will notice, you'll have one long edge of this, and then you'll have a short curved edge. So I'll put this down flat so you can see. So what we want to do is that long straight edge is going to be the V of our swimsuit, and then we've got this side panel here. So that's where the curve is, and we're going to attach the curve of the cup piece, side cup piece, to that. So we just flip that over so we've got our right sides together. Now you will have a notch on your cup piece here, and you'll have a notch on that piece as well. So what you want to do to start is match up the notches with your pin or clip, depending on what method you're going to use to attach these together. I'm going to do this on my sewing machine. Now I want to just make sure that these ends are matched as well, so I'll pull them together. You will need to stretch this slightly around that curve. That's what's going to give you a nice hold in the shape to support that bust. So we just clip that around that curve. Up piece is slightly smaller, so you will need to stretch that to fit in, and then we want to take this other end, and that matches up to the side edge of that panel just in there. So we want to match that so that we've got that flat, you can see that flat bit there is coming up against that arm curve. So we sit that nice and flat in there like that. So we've got that flat bit matching into that nice curved bit, and then we just continue. Now you won't need to stretch the top part of that side panel very much because that's at the top of the bust where it doesn't need as much support as what it will at the bottom. So I like to use lots of pins so that because sewing with lycra, as we know, can move around a little bit. So you can see there that I've just pinned that section. So when I open that up, I'll have a piece that will actually look like this. And that's the front cup part joined together. So what you need to do is grab all pieces, so you'll have a mirror image for the other side, and then you'll have your 2 lining pieces. So if you pin them all together and then go and sew them on your sewing machine or your serger using a 1 centimeter seam allowance. The seam allowances have all been included in the pattern, so if you just be very accurate with this and use your 1 centimeter seam allowance to sew that together on all 4 pieces, and then we'll move on to the next step. Now that we've sewn all those pieces, what I like to do is just trim that seam allowance back, just to take away that bulk around the cup. So I'm just going to trim that. You'll have a 1 centimeter seam allowance there. I'm just going to trim that back to 0.5 just to create the bulk. So again, I've got my 4 pieces that I've sewn, so I'm just going to trim that seam allowance, and then we'll come back and move on to the next step. We now need to locate our 2 back pieces, and we need to join them so we have our crotch line down here, and then we have the curve of the shoulder strap around like that, and this is the leg edge on the back here. So what we want to do is right sides together and making sure that we've got our crotch line down there, our leg line over here, and then this will form the side of our swimwear, and we've got our back curve there. So the edge that we're going to be attaching is this long straight edge of the center back. Okay, so as we hold this up, you can see that we've got our straight crotch seam down here in my left hand, and then we've got that straight center back seam across the top, and that is at the end of that curved section. So that's the seam that we're going to be joining now, is the center back seam. Okay, so these are our 2 front pieces in underneath. I'll just lift this up so you can see there that we've got those straight edges on the side and the straps up to the top. Now our back piece, again, we're just going to take, there's our center back seam, we're just going to take this first strap and lie it across like that. We're going to get our second strap and lie it across like that. So what you should have is your swimsuit looking like this at the moment. Now while our straps are flat like this, what I want to do is just grab this end of the back piece and this top bit and just attach them together like that. So, and again, the same with the other side. So just grabbing that back piece and that front piece and just pinning them together at the shoulders. I've got them pinned at the shoulders. What I want to now do is just take my swim and turn it to the right side and just open it up. I just want to double check that I've done this correctly. So what you do is have your back piece with the wrong side facing up, making sure that as it's crossed over, you will end up with the cups the right way around. Perfect. So as you can see, I can see my 2 cups are now going to be facing with that nice V coming down the middle, and I've got my 2 straight sides facing the side of my garment. This is what it looks like when you turn it the right sides. So what I like to do is have my lining section with the wrong side, the seams facing up, and then my right side of my fabric on top of that. So what in effect I'm going to be doing is I'm going to baste this seam here together before I attach my elastic, and I'm going to do that on both sides. So hopefully you can make sense of which seam I'm doing. So these are my shoulder seams of my front pieces. That was the curved bit we joined earlier, and then we have this long section through here, and I'm going to baste that. So that forms the side of our togs. Now what I like to do is just make sure that I haven't got any twisting in it as I'm doing this between the lining and the main piece. So I just clip all that together prior to basting. Now that we've attached our elastic to that side, what we want to do is remove our basting stitches. So go ahead and remove your basting stitches from both sides. This will just make it easier to do it now rather than after we've top stitched it. So I've just removed my basting stitch, and what I want to then do is turn my elastic over and top stitch on the right side of my fabric all the way along that edge. So whether you use a narrow zigzag on your sewing machine or a cover stitch, we want to make sure that we're top stitching on the good side of our fabric using a matching thread. Now with a 10mm wide elastic, I find that if I'm using a cover stitch, I want to make sure that the edge of my cover stitch backing is on the edge of the elastic. This will just prevent the elastic from flipping onto the outside when you're wearing it. It's the same if you're using a narrow zigzag. Make sure that your zigzag is a little bit in from that edge just to stop it from flipping out. So you want to make sure that you're catching the edge of your 10mm elastic as you're top stitching. So if you go ahead and top stitch that whole edge using your preferred method, and then we'll come back to the next step. Next step, we're going to attach our two front pieces to our front section. So what I've done is just laid them with the right sides facing up, and those two cover stitched or top stitch edges meeting together in that center. So I've just got that sitting up that way. I've also grabbed my front piece of my main fabric, and I've just marked the center. So what I want to do is attach that center and make sure that these V's meet right in that center piece. So what I'm going to do is I'll flip that upside down and show you how I attach that in. So we have our V section here, and we have, I'm just going to change direction there, and we have our center front piece here with the center marked with a pin. What I want to do is flip that up. So if I grab that where the crotch section is, and I want to push that away from the center V. So I've now got that sitting with that pinned center where the center of those two edges that I've just finished are. So what I'll do first is match that finished edge to that center and pop a pin in there. So I've got right sides together with my good fabric piece. I then want to grab the other edge and do the same thing. So match that into the center and keep those two cut pieces that we've just finished tightly together. We don't want a gap there, otherwise that will show when you're wearing the garment. But you also at the same time don't want to cross them over. So against each other, and pop a pin in that one as well. So I've now got those two cups buttered up nicely together and pinned. I then want to go ahead and attach the rest of that piece to the cup section. So that's that front center piece, and that's the cup section. So I'm just going to attach that at the sides as well. And then just pin that all the way along that whole gathering. So I'll have three pieces of fabric. I've got the lining of the cups and the main of the cups, and then the main body section. So I'm just going to pin that all the way along, making sure that my seams are all nice and neat, matching up. My edges are all nice and neat, matching up. I'm just going to pin that all the way along. Then what I want to do is repeat the same thing on the other side. So then I'll end up with that main front section, wrong sides together, attached to the cups like that. I'm then going to go and baste that whole row across there together. So once I've pinned this other side, I just want you to baste those three pieces together. So you've got your front section and your cups. Just go and baste them together, and then we'll move on to the next step. We want to have our front section, that's our front line, our front main facing away, and our two lining pieces facing up. So what I'm going to do now is grab the lining piece and put this on top of the two lining sections of the cup. Again, I've marked the center of that lining piece, and I'm just going to line that up with both edges, all edges of the front piece. So we're like sandwiching the two cup sections in between the main and the lining pieces. So what I'm going to do is, where that middle pin is of my center front, I'm going to match that to the center front of where the V section is, and then just pin that piece of lining all the way across. Now I have all my sections basted together across that underbust part. So what you should have is your main section of your lining, and then you'll have your two cup pieces, then you'll have your main fabric. So we've sandwiched the cup pieces in between the lining and the main fabric of the front section. So now what I want to do, they're basted together because it makes it easier now to sew it on my machine. With a 1 centimeter seam allowance, I want to sew all the way across that whole seam. So if you go ahead and do that on your machine or your overlocker, we're just going to attach all those pieces together. So now when we flip this over, we will have on the inside our seams are hidden in the lining by sandwiching it together. Now just before you move on to the next step, so where this V section is held on here, you can do a little bar tacking stitch just down underneath on that seam line, just to reinforce it there if you think you're going to need a little bit extra stability. So have a look at your bar tacking settings. I'm going to do that for this just to give it a bit of reinforcement. So I've just turned my togs to the wrong sides facing out so I can show you what I want to do for this next section. Before I attach the sides, you'll notice that one edge does not have the elastic in it yet or has been top stitched. So I want to fix that up before I go and attach my sides together. So what we're going to do is we're going to baste all around that open edge. So starting at the underarm of the front section, I'm just going to follow that whole piece around where it's all still open, and that will take me to the other edge of the other side. So where that whole back curve piece is all open, I'm just going to go and baste that all together, and then I'm going to repeat those earlier steps. So I'll baste that together, and then I'm going to attach my elastic on the inside of the lining, and then I'm going to fold it over and top stitch it. What I'm going to do here is grab my 4 edges of the sides at the top. So in our previous step we had applied the elastic and done our top stitching all the way to the edge. So I like to just undo that about 5 centimeters, so that will give you the ability to attach those two sides nice and neatly. And then what we can do at the end is then go back and top stitch them all the way around. The reason that you need to unpick them is because you need to do that front top stitch at the V before you can attach it on. So I just find that this method works for the way I put it together. You might find a better option, and that's perfectly okay too. So what I'm doing here is just lying my suit out so that I don't get it all tangled up. So you can see that I've just got the straps crossed. I've got the front section lying up. So what I want to do now is actually attach the two sides together here. So to make a nice finish on the edge, what you will be doing is grabbing the front section and just pushing the back section away. So put the front section and the lining just out on its own like that. So this is the underarm, and down here is the leg seam. So I've just got that side section like that. What you will then do is reach under, just reach through the bottom and just grab that other side section and just lay it on top like that. So you will in effect have your two sides together. like that without twisting your garment. So what I'm going to do firstly is peel back the black lining, and I'm going to attach the two pieces, the front section, which has got that join already in it, to the back section at the side. So I'm just going to join that together with a basting stitch. So if you just go onto your machine and just baste that along, then I'll come along and show you the next step. Okay, so we've now basted that front section to just the back main section, and our lining is still loose. So I've got my suit with the lining facing upwards and the front section on top. So what I want to do now is, this is the side I'm working on, this side closest to me, and as I said, that lining is still loose. So what I actually want to do is reach underneath from the other side. So just, you can, if you find it easy, you can actually just roll the suit in. We're just using almost like the burrito method to attach the lining. So I'm just going to roll that suit towards the side I'm working on, and then what I'm going to do is grab that piece of lining here that's facing up, and I'm going to push it to the back so I can grab it out. And then what I'm going to do is attach that to the other piece of lining on the front that I've just basted together. And this is why we use that 5 centimeter gap at the top. So if I've got a little bit too much fabric and I can't get around that, so just pull that out, and I want that top edge to attach to the top edge of the lining, that seam that we've just basted. And you can see there that I've just got them. So you'll have two sections of lining attached together, and you will see the fabric on top, and that is the back piece of the fabric that you'll see on top. Okay, so I'm just going to start pinning. I'm lining side to lining side together on that seam that we just basted. And while I'm doing that, I'm sort of stuffing the togs in between that in the burrito method. So I'm going to sew this seam using a lightning bolt stitch with a 1 centimeter seam allowance, and I'm just going to start at that top edge underneath the armhole, and I've got the togs coming in like a burrito method through there. So let's go and really slowly sew that side seam together. You're going to need to make sure that you're pushing the garment away from that seam, because you don't want to catch it in there. You should have plenty of room to be able to sew your 1 centimeter seam allowance. So go all the way down and just stop and slowly, and make sure that you haven't caught your fabric in between if you're unsure. Okay, we now have what resembles a sausage, and that's our seam that we just sewed, which is one of our side seams. So all you need to do is just reach in at the bottom of your burrito roll, I guess, and that is the bottom section where the crotch is, and if you just pull that all the way through, what you'll then have is this beautiful side seam that's all enclosed. So you can see there, on the front I have my side seam, and then on the inside I have my side seam all enclosed, and I've got that top section. All I'll need to do is just reattach my elastic and then just turn that over and top stitch it, and I'm going to have this really nice finish at the top under my arms as well. But before I go ahead and do that, I'm going to repeat that step for the other side. Okay, what we're going to do is now do the same method on the other side. So what I've got here is my back section basted to my front section like we did in the previous step. I've got my lining loose, and again I just want to bring the lining underneath the swimsuit and all the way around it and attach it to the other side of the lining. So that basting stitch that we just did, and where we attach that, that's where I want to start. So I'm going to create, starting that just in here where I've put that clip. Sometimes it helps to clip that first part so you know what you're looking for when you're turning it over. So now what I've got is I've actually got my, okay, I've joined my second side. I have another burrito roll. So again, I'm just going to pull that through, and what that will then create is my second side seam. So now I've got my two side seams beautifully enclosed. I can go ahead and remove those basting stitches so you can't see them on the inside. And then what I'm going to do is just neaten these top sections that I've unpicked. So by neatening them, I'm just going to reattach the elastic so that it goes all the way around, and then I'm just going to turn them over and then top stitch between those sections that I unpicked. And we've got our two crotch sections still not attached. So what we're going to do next is we're going to attach them separately, because I find this a nice easy method, and it'll be seamless on both the inside and the outside. And when we attach our leg elastic, that will anchor it together at the bottom of the crotch section. So what I'll do, I'll peel away the front section of the lining and the front section of the fabric. I'm just going to attach to the front section of the fabric, the back section of the fabric at the crotch, using a 1 centimeter seam allowance. So you can go ahead and pin that together. Got that seam open. I'm just going to open up that back seam so it sits nice and flat. I'm just going to open that back seam up, and I'm going to attach that front to back at that bottom crotch section using a lightning bolt stitch so that it will be nice and secure. I'll go ahead and attach the front to the back section, and then come back and I'll show you how to do the lining. Okay, I've now got my main section attached at the crotch. I've got the lining section facing up. So what I'm going to do is take this front section of my lining, and I'm going to bring it up over the center front and then attach it to the back section like that. So the back section, so basically I've now got my garment sandwiched in between the lining crotch section. So again, I'm just going to pin that and do a lightning bolt stitch on that lining section as well. Okay, we've now joined that together at the lining. So what you can now do is turn your garment all the way out, so you'll have this beautiful fully lined swimsuit with no seams showing on the inside, which just makes it really nice and comfortable to wear as well. So you can see now I've got my when my crotch lining is all that seam's hidden on the inside, and then on my main fabric that seam is on the inside as well. So when I attach my legs together, that's going to anchor that nice and sturdy together there like that. Now what you'll need to do next is, and I find I always like to baste my pieces together before I attach my elastic to the leg holes. So if you are comfortable enough, you can either go ahead and attach your elastic without basting, or you can baste it together to stop it moving. You're going to have those side seams anchored anyway, but I like to baste it. So I'm just going to go ahead and baste it before I attach my elastic. And then what you're going to do is attach your 10mm rubber elastic to the two leg openings, and then turn them over as we have been and top stitch it, and you're all done. So let's go and finish those steps off and try on our new swimsuit. Here's our finished modelled piece of amazing swimwear. This is the Eternity Maillot. I fixed these little bits that you can see on the purple suit were sticking out like that. They could probably do with a slight adjustment a little bit more, but overall I'm super happy with the fit. I'm really happy with how that's all sitting nicely in there.